Welcome to the Doom Scroll News Report here on Radio Taiwan International, where I, Hanna Bilinski, and my co-host,
Amanda Stevens,
two writers, political by necessity, cover some of the biggest international news stories dominating our news feeds from the last week. I'm Hanna Bilinski. I know I sound crazy today. There is no way around it, I'm afraid, but
yeah.
I'm afraid it's going to be quite an America-focused episode because
That's been our whole feed.
I know,
been our whole feed.
We're going to have to talk about that bizarre shooting that happened at the Whitehouse Correspondents' dinner and how everyone did or didn't respond.
It was very, very peculiar
Very weird.
right from the start.
As well as the Atlantic piece alleging FBI Director Kash Patel has a consistent pattern of, we'll just call it misconduct.
God,
And the lawsuit he filed against them for the article.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
Let's get to the shooting. Yeah, to the White House Correspondents' dinner shooting.
Here's the basic rundown.
Mm-hmm.
The suspect, Cole Thomas Allen, a 31-year-old man from California who went to Caltech, got a master's degree in CS, no criminal record, first searched online about the dinner on April 6th, and then he booked a room at the same hotel hosting the event. Took the Amtrak across the country, kept up with when Trump was going to arrive. Then, at about 8:30 p.m., he sprinted through a security checkpoint, a floor above the ballroom with a 12-gauge, a .38 pistol, multiple knives, and a bunch of ammo. A Secret Service officer shot at him 5 times, missed all 5 times. Honestly. And then Allen was tackled to the ground. 10 minutes before the attack, he had sent his family a manifesto, lots of manifestos in the news lately, about how he felt it was his duty to deal with, quote, pedophiles, rapists, and traitors, unquote, of the Trump administration.
I mean, same, but maybe not in this way.
I kind of feel you, but okay. This is the 3rd assassination attempt on Trump since 2024. You know, it's funny. A few days ago, my mother-in-law, loyal listener of our program, by the way, shout out to Pam. Thank you.
We love loyal listeners.
She asked me while she was in a video call with Aaron and our son what I thought about the shooting. Of course, we couldn't really actually talk about it much.
What was your son's opinion?
I mean, he was like, that's what he does. Yeah. But I mentioned that the overwhelming impression I got from the shooting and how it's been covered in the news is nobody really seems to give a crap. Am I wrong? It literally feels like the news covered it for like a day or two. And since then, it's been reduced to a bunch of memes, mostly of the image captured of White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller appearing to use his wife as a human shield amid the kerfuffle. So, Amanda, what was your impression of how the public and the media reacted to the incident?
Well, I will say that unfortunately, the American public and media institutions have a playbook for shootings. Yeah. And there's like, I'm sure people who follow American news know there's like a literal playbook for how to report it, what to report, how to update the reportings, when to share further information. And so I would say that in the initial 24 hours, everything was very by the book in a good way. In a good way. Minus
standard.
Standard and professional. Then the videos started coming out of the very unprofessional way that a lot of the politicians comported themselves. And by this, I mean usually like abandoning their significant others. Yeah. In my opinion, very unprofessional.
Very
because it doesn't feel like, I understand that like if there's the vice president and the vice president's wife, for example, though this is not directly about J.D. Vance. Like the vice president is a more important high priority target.
Sure.
Right? So the secret security, you have to take him away, right? Like, let's say that. Okay.
Yeah.
But I feel like his wife should also have like an MO. Like he at least should have talked to her about like, hey, they're going to take me away. This is what I need you to do in any situation like this.
Some kind of SOP, right?
Some kind of SOP that they have worked out. Sure. That's clearly not the case for any of these people. And that's another like tragedy, but also a thing that sort of made this a comedy. However, I feel like probably because we do this show, a lot of my media, like within one day, immediately turned attention on how sort of like suspiciously timed everything was.
Right.
So it took me about one day, a day and a half, because I also reported on it here for RTI.
Mm-hmm.
So within the first 24 hours, everything was very standard. But about right after, the day after I posted it, so around Tuesday our time, maybe late Monday, people started like looking back at the record of things that were said. How strange it is that everybody reacted in the way that they did. This thing that you pointed out about like what first seemed like a miracle, but now seems like maybe a little bit suspicious that the shooter wasn't hurt, because it's not necessarily
nobody
like
got hurt.
This is the worst thing to point out. But like American security forces don't have the best track record of keeping violent people safe.
Sure.
Should we? I think that's up for debate. But like I've never known the Secret Service to be gentle.
No, I don't think so.
Or bad at shooting.
Yeah.
So for me, very standard.
Yeah.
But then a little bit more investigative, which is kind of where we are now. And that's where a lot of my information is right now, is a lot of my media sphere is very like investigative and memey.
Yeah.
Split between like the layman.
And frankly, kind of speculative.
Yes.
And also just kind of buried beneath all the other stuff happening, the ongoing
and let's not forget the war
Iran.
And the fact that nobody has oil and the midterms are coming up and everything's getting gerrymandered. There's a lot of news to keep track of.
Yeah, and I think the way the shooting has been pushed down, it's not just that there are so many big stories right now, but it also seems to really speak to how tired we are of hearing about Trump, right? I mean, if I'm being honest, even as it was happening, I didn't care because, like, sorry to be morbid, but nobody got shot. Not even the shooter got shot. And it was all over in minutes. So it wasn't a very compelling story. Nothing really happened. And so that's why the reaction, or non-reaction, as it were, to the news feels like the bigger story to me. I think it really goes to show how bored and how exhausted we are with the assassination attempts. And at this point, a not insignificant number of people seem to believe at least one of the attempts has been staged. So
I find myself tentatively...
You kind of wonder a little bit, right?
Tentatively, I would say skeptically in that group.
Yeah. So over the course of these 2 years, 3 attempts, the national reaction has gone from horror to outrage to something that's more like a shrug. By the way, Trump's approval rating has not budged. So is it even possible to shock Americans anymore?
It's like the cost of trying to be high information.
Yeah, I
which
guess so.
You and I both advocate for. I still advocate for, even though I have to find myself, like, I think of the word like dolphining, like in and out of like paying attention and being on top of everything, and then being like, and now I can't listen to anything.
Gotta take a break.
Attention to anything, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's hard. Like, it's a lot easier to be shocked. We've even said this before, but it's a lot easier to be shocked when you're not worried about, like, will you be able to afford next month?
Yeah.
Right? Or
when you have
some people are worried about a
time.
draft in the United States. People are worried about, like, well, what if we don't, what oil prices are going up. People are also being hounded about the redistricting that I talked about.
Yeah, the
which
gerrymandering.
is also really important, redistricting and gerrymandering.
We'll probably get to that next week.
Yeah, we probably will. But I think it's also like the people who've decided that they don't like Trump or hate Trump, talking about his like approval rating, aren't going to change their mind. The people who are never going to change their mind, case in point, that's it, right? And I think that there's a lot of people in the middle who don't have the time to answer surveys about like, how do I feel about the current situation? Because again, for a lot of Americans, like we have skirted around this affordability crisis as like, how do people even manage to afford to live in the United States? We've never really done a deep dive into it. So that also might be something we should do in the future. But it prevents people, in my opinion, from like
really engaging with the news.
Right, because it's like, well, what can I do about this? Because I'm still worried about like my job.
I got other priorities.
Right, and like very immediate priorities.
Now, for Trump's part, he has, of course, gotten mad at Jimmy Kimmel again for some blithe comment he made about how 3 days before the dinner, Melania had a glow like an expectant widow. Okay.
I hadn't heard that joke.
After the shooting, this does seem to be in pretty poor taste, but like, he couldn't have predicted that. And this is, as we all know, the second time Trump has tried to get Kimmel fired. And ultimately, I think it just speaks to how much of a grudge he has against Kimmel in particular.
It's tragic because that is really funny.
It is pretty funny.
It's really funny.
But the way this spat overtaking the news of the actual shooting really kind of encapsulates the whole public reaction, doesn't it? Like, no one is talking about the shooting itself, but about all the ways they can kind of fight their culture war as a result of it. As for us, and I suppose our own part in that culture war, I think we can both speak to the main front of it that we participate in, being as online as we are, the meme side. And I am talking, of course, about the picture of Stephen Miller I mentioned earlier, where he appears to be using his wife as a human shield. Okay.
He really does. There's a picture. There is also a video where he's walking her out in front of him.
Now, while it is a real photo, real video footage, the caption is misleading because technically, if you look at where everybody was, Miller and a Secret Service agent were positioned between the suspect's location and Katie Miller as they exited.
Very good.
But what's interesting is the truth almost doesn't matter because it's too well suited to our narrative of Stephen Miller as one of the most evil people in Trump's administration. And besides, it's funny. Broadly speaking, though, should we be taking all this a lot more seriously? I mean, I guess it's kind of an existential question, but it seems important to ask nonetheless. Like, should we be allowing ourselves to be so nonchalant in the face of what's really pretty dire political circumstances? I definitely feel complicit in a way in how divided we've become along political lines.
I feel like we're just like queuing up things that I really want to talk about in depth, like this year.
Oh, yeah.
That we sort of have like a footing.
Yeah.
And like, I definitely sound a little bit tin hat, but I mean, all of this is also by design.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and
I hear you.
I don't necessarily, I don't know how I want to frame this because I haven't really done a dedicated deep dive that has lasted more than like a few days.
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is that it is more convenient for people to be looking at memes and arguing with each other over their like opinions about what's going on than actually doing research into what it is or holding like a serious conversation. And the culture war thing is kind of a part of it because the more us versus them you can make it, ironically, it sort of like takes away people's power because it stops you from looking at like what the actual problem is, right?
Yeah.
So if we take this again
or
as
solutions.
If we were to look at this as like a test theory, assume some people are looking into this and thinking that maybe this was fake. Less people will be looking into it in that way for a multitude of reasons. One, because of the memes and because of the culture war and because of like, oh my God, I can't believe you're not taking this seriously versus other people saying, oh my God, I can't believe you're taking this seriously. But also there's the other layer of like, if we were to investigate like this cover up or is this a scam or a hoax, like what about all the other ones that we believe have happened up until this point and the fact that there's been no accountability for those. So I think for a lot of people, it feels like a useless expense of energy. Also because none of these are things that you can see like immediate action on or like immediate results, even if you were to put your energy towards it. So it's easier to just make fun of them and express your dissatisfaction that way. Though I do think as much as I do get like schadenfreude joy from the memes about all these different things, I do think that it is a really valuable thing to constantly remind yourself of the human nature and the humanity of these people for multiple reasons. And sometimes that's uncomfortable for me. Like, great, actually, Stephen Miller did probably protect his pregnant wife.
Probably.
I would prefer a world where that's true. You know, I think that's better, even though I really dislike that man. But also, like, of course he did. She's his wife, right? And she's pregnant with his child. So, of course he did. But again, the more that you can remember, like, the humanity of these people, I feel like that chips away at, like, what you're unable to do.
Yeah, I hear you.
Right? They turn into someone you dislike. That is maybe on your level of intellect and ability to debate.
God forbid we relate to them. Now, let's talk Patel.
Speaking of unrelatable.
I have a tough question for you right off the bat. All right. FBI Director Kash Patel, Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr., and Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. If, out of these three, you had to pick just one person who was most incompetent in their role, which one would you pick?
This is my Sophie's choice. Oh my God.
I don't actually expect you to have an answer because I don't.
I don't know.
They're all pretty bad at their jobs. Aren't they?
You know what? Do you know what I would say?
Okay.
What I would say.
All right.
I would say still Pete Hegseth.
I knew it.
because a lot of my frustration around Kash Patel and RFK Jr. is that I feel like on some level, like they're so close to getting the actual problems that do exist.
Yeah.
Like they're really close. Like Kash Patel wrote a book. He's wrote many books, but he wrote a book earlier that was talking about like the American like disciplinary mafia and how like we can't expect like police and security agencies to just be killing everybody all the time.
Sure.
Like you're so close. RFK Jr. being like, yeah, you know, we should really take a look at these food additives. That's kind of a problem. Oh my God, I think you're right. But then he like swerves and he's like, no more pasteurized milk. And I'm like,
more vaccines.
No, no more vaccines. So I would still go for my nemesis, Petey boy.
Well,
we're not talking about him today.
I want to put the spotlight on Patel.
Good.
Who
I also dislike him, by the way.
On April 17th, he had a nice little piece published about him in The Atlantic entitled "The FBI Director is MIA, Missing in Action."
Read so much about this.
Author Sarah Fitzpatrick cited more than 24 anonymous sources for this story, claiming Patel was prone to binge drinking, partying, frequent unexplained absences, was paranoid about his job security, and that White House officials are already talking about potential replacements. Now, the article actually ran under the title, "Kash Patel's Erratic Behavior Could Cost Him His Job," before it was retitled to the FBI Director's MIA.
That's a shame because...
I know, right? But Fitzpatrick writes that Patel has managed to hold on to his job mainly because of his commitment to using the federal government as a stick against the president's personal and political adversaries.
I also believe this was mentioned in his book, like back when he was a conspiracy theorist, about like, we shouldn't be doing this. Go on.
A lot of the people she interviewed basically say that he's not a real functioning FBI director.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what stood out to me about this bit of reporting is how many people inside or close to this administration were willing to talk to Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone seems to suggest that he really is doing that bad of a job. Come to think of it, has he actually accomplished anything? You know, normally FBI directors have been defined by investigations they ran, cases they closed. But I can't think of anything. Can you?
Okay. So I cannot think of anything big off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But if I could circle back to your point about how many people are talking about Kash Patel, like because of the nature of their jobs.
Yeah.
And because ideally the FBI is supposed to be an independent entity.
Yes.
Many people in the FBI, regardless of how they feel about what's going on, maintain like sort of like a lifelong like what do I want to say, like embargo on like, we're just not going to talk to the press.
Yeah.
Because it's always something. And to their credit, it is always something. Someone's always mad. Someone's always trying to get something. And there were so many people who were like, I have never talked to the press before in my entire life. Like, I never thought that I would come to this. I don't even really condone this. But the situation is that unstable inside that I feel like this is now like a threat to national security.
That seems dire, right? That seems pretty dire.
There have been a lot of people that were fired. The New York Times did interviews with some of these sources, some of the non-anonymous sources, who were like lifelong people and like specialists.
Yeah.
And one of them said that she got fired because somebody else misidentified her. She went into a meeting and then they said through the paper trail that they were like, oh, we understand that you're not the person who was responsible for overseeing this investigation that Trump was angry about like 4 years ago. And she's like, great, can I have my job back? And they were like, no.
What the?
And they fired her anyway. because they needed someone to take the heat for what was done, and they just needed to show that heads would roll.
Oh, no.
And so that's one example. There was another woman who got fired. She was a lifelong analyst working on violent crime. And she loved her job because she felt like she was actually doing
Making
something important, right? But then she got redirected to immigration, and she was directed to go and basically start procedures so that they would be able to file against protesters who weren't doing anything wrong. And she told her squad to stand down and not do it. Don't follow that order.
Yeah,
it's not legal.
It's not constitutional.
It's not constitutional, and it's not legal. And then she was told, listen, you can either do it and be fired in 4 years when you're investigated, or you can get fired now because you're not going to do it. And so that's how bad the situation is internally. Have they accomplished anything that's really worthwhile? I don't think so, because there's a lot of these people who have lifelong jobs, like this woman who's working in violent crime, that have been ripped away from it to do something they don't have expertise in.
Now, Patel, he has responded by filing a $250 million lawsuit against The Atlantic and Fitzpatrick for defamation. The lawsuit alleges that the magazine ignored the FBI's denials, failed to respond to a Friday letter from Patel's lawyer asking The Atlantic senior editors and legal department for more time to refute the allegations. So they were given 2 hours, basically, before the article hit the press. They're claiming something called actual malice, a legal standard would require Patel to show the publisher knowingly printed false information or ignored doubts about its accuracy, but he's on pretty shaky ground, according to some lawyers who specialize in the First Amendment. The funny part is, if the case actually gets off the ground, The Atlantic would get the opportunity to take sworn testimony from Patel and others about the allegations, which would be a gift to the case they made in their article and could potentially put him on a path to self-destruction. Do you think Patel has really stepped in it at this point? I mean, broadly speaking, do you think his days are numbered? Pam Bondi got the boot. Kristi Noem is out too. It seems a bit too on the nose for Trump to fire the women and the people of color first, but hey, it makes sense, right?
I don't feel like it's on the nose at all. I feel like this was always secretly part of the plan, to be honest.
What's it going to be? Is it going to be another lawsuit that is just quietly settled out of court, you think?
Honestly, this lawsuit reminds me a lot of SLAPP lawsuits, which, if you guys haven't heard the term before, a SLAPP lawsuit is a term at least used in the United States where a company files a suit that they think they won't win, but to try to scare the plaintiff, who's usually a citizen, just a regular person, scare them into withdrawing their lawsuit because of how much it's going to cost and because they have the ability to drag it out.
Yep.
This reminds me of that because I think that's exactly what it is. This is the Trump playbook, which is when someone publishes something you don't like about them, take them to court.
Yeah.
And it has worked in the past.
Unfortunately.
It has worked in the past. I don't think it'll work this time, though, because when I was listening or reading another sort of analysis of this, most of the times when it has worked has been when the company is not primarily a news organization.
Yes, they're beholden to a larger corporation.
They have some business that they want to do. Like
the
Amazon.
Atlantic is private, though.
Right. The Atlantic is private, similar to the New York Times, which has also been sued and then won. Yeah. Those two, the only thing they do is news. And also the Atlantic is another one of those a crazy high bar for accuracy
it is.
And reporting and journalism. Yeah. So it's they trust what their reporters put out. Yeah. And so I don't know that it will be quietly settled outside of court. I think if it is, then it's going to be because Kash himself is the one that wants to quietly settle it so that, like you said, he doesn't have to actually
in the hot seat.
Right. He doesn't have to incriminate himself for being drunk on the job constantly and partying and never in the right place and using his private jet to fly around his girlfriend who maybe isn't even hanging out with him anymore.
Hello. That's it for today's news report. A quick reminder that you can find all of our referenced articles in the show notes for today's episode. I'm Hanna Bilinski.
I'm Amanda Stevens.
Thanks for joining us on air today. Sorry again about my voice. Tune in tomorrow for more programs by Radio Taiwan International. And in the meantime, remember to stop scrolling and touch grass. We'll see you next week.
Bye.